hype for Elden Ring has been incredible, and 2 weeks on from launch, it is still going strong. So, reviewers marketed this game as incredibly accessible and easy for newcomers to the Soulsborne series. They probably didn't expect someone like me to stumble across their videos, someone who hates being challenged by games, who immediately gives up when things get difficult. But yet here I am. I got sucked into the hype, I bought Elden Ring on release, and we are going to talk about my adventures through Elden Ring and my journey towards the platinum. Hello trophy hunters and welcome back to the channel. My name is Tanya and today, as I said, we're going to be talking about my platinum hunt in Elden Ring. So before we begin, I would just like to give you a little spoiler warning. I do have some gameplay footage and some commentary about some of the late game bosses, so if you've not finished the game and you don't want to be spoiled, I would maybe leave this video for after when you have. And I would also like to say sorry in advance because I feel like some of my opinions on the game might anger some of the Souls veterans, and I don't really want to do that, so sorry. So the first thing I would like to discuss about Elden Ring is actually the trophy list. So I'm a trophy hunter, and the first thing I enjoy doing when I'm about to play a new game or go for a platinum is to have a quick read over the trophy list. I like to see what I'm coming up against before I get into it, and as I said, I've never played the previous Souls games, so I don't know what they're like in terms of trophy lists, but personally I found Elden Ring a little bit uninspiring, I have to say. So in terms of the trophies themselves, you have a couple of different varieties. You have fighting bosses. Most of the trophies are boss related, be they story boss or optional mini boss. You have a couple of collectible trophies, so getting your legendary weapons, ashes, spells, that kind of thing. And then you have your 3 endings and there's 3 story trophies. That's it. That is your lot. One thing I like about this list is there are no spoilers in the trophies. A lot of games can be quite bad for, as soon as you read the list, there's like a whole collection of story things that just outline the entire plot of the game, which is a bit disappointing to read that before you've played. But, you know, the perils of looking at the trophy list before you start, I guess. Another thing that I've seen debated about actually with the trophy list is the fact there is a missable trophy. As far as I'm aware, the only one that is fully missable is the legendary weapons, just because there are a couple that you can completely miss. So one of them is tied to killing an NPC, which if I hadn't read the guide, I would have missed that one because I never kill NPCs in games. I am a massive goody two-shoes, so if the thought of killing an NPC or other NPCs hearing rumors of me killing an NPC, absolutely not. That destroys me. Will not do. But I will do it for a trophy, so maybe that says more about me. But the other one is, I think it's called the Bolt of Grassnax. It's in a location that changes after a certain point in the story, and it becomes missable that way. So I did look at a guide for these, and I guess the perils of looking at a guide is it does take away some of the fun. So playing blind and figuring things out for yourself is meant to be, you know, the way to play a Dark Souls game. So by looking at the guide, you do kind of ruin that for yourself. However, my argument would be, I'm not going to replay a 100-hour game. I'm just not. I do not have the patience for a second or third playthrough of a 100-hour game. Like, if it's looking at a guide and spoiling a tiny bit of the story, I am going to do that every time. I'm sorry, I am that type of player. So with that being said, in terms of the 3 ending trophies, I did save scum them. I did sync my cloud save after the final boss and then just reload it to get all 3 endings because I'd set them up earlier in the game. So right off the bat, I would like to say that I did do an accidental hard mode of Elden Ring and I didn't even realise it. So 90% of the bosses, I would say, can be cheesed if you are a magic build. If you can use, I think it's incantations that have the staff, but if you can use them, you know you're winning. I was a strength and dexterity vagabond, so I was in with sword and shield. So I had to get up close and personal with every single boss, and it made a lot of the fights more difficult than they had to be. You can respec quite early on in the game, but I decided against it. You know, I figured I started with my vagabond, I'd already invested so much money and resources into my sword that I may as well continue as my vagabond and just see how far I can get. which, you know, turned out to be endgame, so that's quite nice. But I do feel like a lot of the battles were sort of stacked against you if you played, you know, as a weapons build rather than a magic build. As well as the accidental hard mode, another thing that I found quite jarring about Elden Ring was just the lack of direction you're given as a player. So I don't necessarily want or need my handheld in game because, you know, I'm pretty good at figuring things out for myself. However, I also don't want to have to read through every single item in a menu to find out what it does, especially a game that has crafting, because the amount of things I've picked up that have no use to me because I'm never going to craft, you know, it makes me read the things for hours and then I give up and then I miss important information. So I think the biggest things I missed in game that would have made my time easier would be the Great Runes. So I got the Great Runes for defeating the bosses. I took them up to the tower like I was meant to. I equipped them from the Grace. And then I carried on the game. I didn't know you needed to consume rune arcs to make the rune active. And then I also didn't know that they ran out when you died. So for the majority of the game, I thought I had these amazing runes equipped that were giving me all these extra attribute points when it wasn't even active the whole time. So I found out like 65 hours into an 8-hour gameplay. Like that was a bit disappointing. I also didn't realise the importance of ashes until quite late in the game as well, I would say. So I did have an ash equipped on my weapon, but I never knew how to use its special move. And I think it might have been because I had a shield out, because I think L2 triggers your special, but my shield also had a special move. So L2 was just like powering up my shield rather than my sword. And it wasn't until I got to the Melania fight and had to go and find a specific Ash to try and take her down that I realised just how helpful these would have been. So there are like a couple of little things in the game that I do wish were just a bit more intuitive, especially for newcomers. Like I think the Ashes are new to this game anyway, and the Great Runes also might be, I'm not sure. But there's a lot of other things that would have been in other Souls games that the Souls veterans will know how to use, but I just have no idea. So I would have liked, you know, a little bit more direction and not just having to rely on me reading a menu, because I'm never going to do that, I'm sorry. So as for the actual gameplay of Elden Ring, I would like to split this into 2 sections. So the first section I would say would encompass like the first 3/4 of the game. I absolutely loved it. I had the best time. I would have rated Elden Ring a 10 out of 10. I would have agreed with all the reviews that this was so easy and accessible and great. And then my second section is going to be the last quarter of the game, which broke me mind, body and soul. And that was me walking a fine line between completing the game and deleting the game. So, you know, there's a bit of a shift there, which I will discuss a little bit more in detail. So we'll discuss the first section first, the first 3/4 of the game. I absolutely loved it. I was having the best time. I really enjoyed the open world. I had so much fun exploring, going into all these interesting dungeons, finding my way out, picking up all the crafting materials I'm never going to use, you know, meeting all these interesting bosses and trying to figure out the best way to take them down. It was just so much fun. Like, the exploration in this game it's one of the best. I have not played a game like it in so long, and it's just been quite refreshing. Another thing which I'm not really gonna talk about in terms of like Elden Ring, like as a positive for the game, because this should just be a standard in the gaming industry, but it was so nice to buy a game on launch that actually worked. The amount of times I have dropped 70 quid in a game just for it to be disgustingly broken is horrific. And I was pleasantly surprised at how well Elden Ring worked, and I do wish that this could happen more in gaming, and I do kind of wish that us as consumers would, you know, hold companies a bit more accountable for the shoddy products that they ship. Slight tangent, but I did really enjoy that. The first real roadblock I would say I hit in gameplay was actually the fight with Radon. That was horrible. That was the first time I considered deleting the game. That was the most frustrating boss battle I'd fought. The concept of the boss battle is amazing, and I think in theory, fantastic. In practice, not so much. So Radon is basically a raid boss in this game. You summon all your friends that you've met throughout the game, you take Radon on, you win, you celebrate, you have a great time. No, the arena is massive. It takes you about 50 years to climb this hill to get up to the wee creep on a horse. And then your summons get killed instantly. He has these devastating attacks that can one-tap you. Again, if I was a magic user, it would have been fine. I could ping him from the bottom of the hill. It would have been great. But I'm not. I had to get right under him and his horse. The camera angles in that fight were atrocious, especially when you were up close to him. And it's not even like you could lock on, because that made the camera angles even worse. It was just an incredibly frustrating fight, and I do feel like it was a lot of RNG, whether your summons would survive, or whether they would do enough damage to help you, or even just down to the moves he would do at the beginning when you're trying to summon everyone in. You know, sometimes he would do just like the big purple bolts that would come towards you, and then, you know, sometimes he would just spam the arrows that would kill you, and I felt there wasn't really a pattern to it, and it would change every time I loaded in, and I wasn't sure why. Honestly, up until that point, that was the worst battle I'd done in the game, and it was a horrible, horrible experience. 0 out of 10, did not like. But I did it. You know, I came, I saw, I conquered. I go back to the open world and do what I do best, which is exploring. And I still enjoyed it. At this point, I was still having fun with it. It was nice being back in my comfort zone. But I was coming across a lot of bosses that were recycled at this point, and that was beginning to kind of annoy me. I understand with the size of the game, it would be ridiculous to expect to have so many unique bosses, but I don't know, I just felt kind of bored fighting the same tree sentinel every new location, or the same stupid wee fire cat statue thing. There was a lot of recycling used. I definitely skipped a lot of things where I could notice the bosses were the same. So, you know, a couple dungeons after I'd done the same layout once, I wouldn't really do it again. Especially the dungeons with the chariots. I hated them. I think I only did one of them, and it just infuriated me so much, so I stopped. But yeah, I was starting to get a little bit iffy about the game, sort of after Radon's battle, but still having fun. I think the real turning point in the game for me was probably going up the Lift of Rold. So that's where it takes you into like the snowy area of the map. That is where I felt like the fights were becoming more RNG rather than skill, and the difficulty spikes were really inconsistent. So with Radon anyway, I already thought the difficulty spike there was quite jarring compared to what I'd been doing before. But in this area, you know, 1 minute I would be one-tapping a boss, the next minute he would be one-tapping me, and there didn't seem to be any scaling. Like, I don't know if I maybe did things in the wrong order, but it wasn't consistent at all, and I found that really frustrating, and I think that's probably when I started to lose my love for the game, and it was more a battle. So rather than the battle being between the Tarnished and the bosses, the battle was between me and the game. And it wasn't satisfying, it wasn't fun. And to be honest, I'm quite surprised I didn't give up there and then, because normally I would. But I knew I was so close to the end. I'd already put so much work into this. I had to get it done. So I said that Radon was the worst battle in the game. I was wrong. That title goes to Millennia. She's horrible. She's disgusting. She's ridiculous. The fight is unfair. I hated it. I really, really hated that battle. She is by far the toughest boss I fought in any game. I just didn't do enough damage to combat her ridiculous heal. So every time she hit either you or your spirit summon, she would heal like 2,000 points or something disgusting like that. Even if you block her attack, she still heals when she makes contact with your shield. It is a nightmare. I really struggled with that. I watched so many guides to try and figure out how to get her down because I knew there had to be a way. And eventually I found one that wasn't for a mage, and they suggested using one of the Ashes of War, and that's when I discovered how much of a game changer that would have been to have in an early game. So the one I used, I think it was called Horde Frost Stomp, and it basically just creates a little like ice blanket that goes out over the ground, and it gives your opponent frostbite. So me and my Mimic used that to the best of our ability, and we finally won. We finally beat Malenia. However, it wasn't what I would class a satisfying win. There's some boss battles that you complete and you just have that feeling of, yes, I did it. Malenia wasn't that. She was so frustrating, and I was already getting annoyed with the game beforehand, and I just wanted to be done with the game at that point. You know, I wasn't having fun with it. So now I am just dragging myself to the finish line. The end is in sight. I fought another couple of people after Malenia, all of which were so easy in comparison. There was a couple of iffy moments where I thought I was going to die due to some ridiculous move I didn't block. But in general, Malenia, if I could beat her, I could do anything. So I got the last items I needed. I got everything done. You know, everything was ticked off my list. We had the final battle. This was another one that was horrible, but not quite as bad. I felt this one was more doable than Malenia, but this one was also worse because it was kind of like two completely separate battles in one. So you're fighting like two different bosses with completely different movesets, and it just felt worse than a two-stage battle. So the final fights, they had a lot of area of effect moves, and my shield was near enough pointless. I did decide to dual wield in this. I actually ended up using Malenia's sword, which the sort of spin power attack was quite good on that. So I had my katana and her sword, and both myself and my Mimic were just doing double damage now, which was quite nice, so we were able to make a dent in these bosses' health. However, again, I feel like this battle is very heavily RNG based. You have to have such a good run on the first boss, so your Mimic has decent health, you have enough potions left to handle the second one. You know, the move sets that they use have to fall in your favor because there's a lot of different ones that can make or break your run. And it took me so long to get a move set that I could work with. And again, it wasn't a satisfying ending. Like, I beat the Elden Beast, the final boss in the game, which there's no trophy for, which again, that maybe could have added to my dissatisfaction for it, but it didn't feel like a satisfying win. So all that was left after the Elden Beast were the 3 endings. So I had set them up previously in the game. I can't remember what you had to do with the, is it Flames of Fire? No, that doesn't sound right. There's like a Flames ending. I can't remember how I set that, but I did something. There was Rani's ending, which you have to do her quest line. And then there's like the standard ending. So these endings, as I mentioned before, I save scummed. So I did them one after another. And I feel like the impact of the endings was probably lost on me a little bit just because I had done that. Which is entirely a me problem. It's not a fault of the game at all. And I'm glad you could save scum it, but I do think I lost a bit of the impact. I also kind of wish the endings had more to do with your gameplay as a whole. So it feels a bit strange to me that I can get all 3 endings with the exact same gameplay and it's down to just like one button push at the end of the game. On the one hand, I like it on the short attention span side of things because I don't have to replay, but on the other hand, it's hard to see how the endings matter when, you know, my gameplay led to all 3 choices. I'm not sure if that made sense or if I explained myself properly, but I do wish your gameplay had more of an impact on the endings, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Overall, I would say my thoughts on the game are positive. I did really enjoy the majority of the game. It is just really that last quarter of the game that kind of soured the whole thing for me. I felt like a lot of the fights were just generally quite unfair, and they were really geared to against the player. And I also feel like a lot of the battles were just geared against someone using a sword as well. Like, magic is the way forward in this game, and I wish I knew that before I started. Another thing I kind of wish was different about Elden Ring were the quest tracking, or the lack of it, I suppose. So, the Soulsborne veterans would say, you know, there's no hand-holding in the game, we do this ourselves, we explore ourselves, blah, blah, blah. But what's wrong with having a section for quests? Like, is that hand-holding? I feel like I probably missed out a lot on the lore just because I couldn't remember what random shack I spoke to a little girl in and had to go find a knight in a castle. And then, you know, with everything you have to do, all the random little bits of the side quests, it's hard to keep track of them. So the main story's fine. The graces point you in the right direction, but I do just wish there was something for the side quests, just because I do like to have that sense of completion. So that would have been nice. I do also wish it was possible to better control your summons in battle. So I had my Mimic for, you know, most of the game. As soon as I unlocked the Mimic, I took it with them because I'd much rather have 2 Miis in battle than anyone else because, you know, I'm the best, obviously. But a lot of the decisions my Mimic made were questionable at best. The main one for me that sticks out is in the Commander Nile fight. Like, my Mimic would just saunter in and immediately heal. It's like, mate, no. Like, you've not even got a hit in yet and you're using your potion. What are you doing? So I do kind of wish you could target who you want your Mimic to go for. So again, Commander Nile has the 2 ghosts. I would like my Mimic to attack the ghosts before they go for him. I would like my Mimic to heal maybe when I heal, or maybe to have 2 or 3 potion heals that you can choose when it uses. I think that would give you a bit more control in battle, and it would kind of level the playing field just that little bit for when the bosses pull out ridiculous moves that you can no way compete with. I don't know if I would necessarily describe this game as accessible or easy. I definitely wouldn't describe it as easy. At its core, Elden Ring is still very much a Soulsborne game, so I feel like they cater towards a very specific type of gamer. And if you are on the more casual side, like what I would probably say I'm a casual gamer, it's not made for us. You know, it's not made for me. This is not my type of game. Although at the very beginning, I was so close to running out and buying all the other Souls games. After the end of the game, I'm not entirely sure if I'd want to. I do have Bloodborne because that was free on PS Plus at one point, so I think I might give that a try just because I have nothing to lose if I don't like it. But I do think the way the reviewers marketed the game has, one, contributed to a lot of the hype, so I mean they did their job. But it's also going to cause a lot of people like me to buy the game when it's not made for us, and then rage quit when they can't do something. Like, I've already seen a lot of rage quit compilations, and, you know your limits with games. Overall, though, I did thoroughly enjoy Elden Ring. I'm glad I took the plunge and went for it because I would have missed out on a fantastic game. Ending ruined it, but for the first 3 quarters, I absolutely loved it. I had no complaints. Overall, I would probably give this a 7 out of 10, I would say. I would rate it a 7 out of 10. For the most part, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with Elden Ring, and it's a nice plat to add to my collection. Are you going for the Elden Ring plat? Let me know. Also, if you have any tips that would have helped any newcomers, leave them down below because there's so much that I didn't realise until embarrassingly late. So, anything to help. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the very next video. Bye!